How did a band with multiple hit singles, successful albums, and even a Grammy Award become remembered almost exclusively for one song and one hairstyle? Why does popular culture still reduce A Flock of Seagulls to I Ran So Far Away, when so many fans consider songs like Space Age, Love Song and Wishing among their finest work? And were they really a one-hit wonder at all? This is the story of how one of the most distinctive bands of the early 1980s became trapped inside its own success, and why there was always much more to A Flock of Seagulls than most people remember. Most people outside the die-hard fan circuit remember A Flock of Seagulls through two images, I Ran So Far Away and Mike Score's famous hairstyle. Both became part of early 80s pop culture, but they also created a problem. They made the band easy to remember, while making the music too easy to overlook. Before that image took over, A Flock of Seagulls were a Liverpool band trying to find their own place in a changing musical landscape. Mike Score, Ali Score, Frank Maudsley and Paul Reynolds arrived at a moment when punk, new wave, synthpop and the new romantic movement had all opened new possibilities. They were not quite any one of those things. Their sound sat somewhere between electronic pop, atmospheric guitar music and futuristic new wave. The key ingredient was the combination of Mike Score's synthesizers and Paul Reynolds' guitar. Reynolds did not play like a traditional rock guitarist. His parts shimmered and echoed, almost like another electronic texture. That gave the band a spacious, cinematic sound that separated them from many other synth-driven groups of the period. So the first thing to understand is this: A Flock of Seagulls did not become interesting because they looked unusual. They looked unusual because they already sounded unusual. The image came later, the music came first. In 1982, I Ran So Far Away changed everything. The song had all the elements that defined the band at their best: pulsing synthesizers, driving bass and rhythm, a sweeping guitar and a lyric that felt like science fiction turned into pop music. It sounded modern, dramatic and slightly strange, which made it perfect for the early 80s. But the song did not become a phenomenon through radio alone. MTV had recently launched in America, and suddenly music was not only something people heard, it was something they watched. A Flock of Seagulls arrived at exactly the right moment. The video for I Ran was simple but unforgettable. Mirrors, lights, futuristic styling and Mike Score standing at the center of it all with a hairstyle nobody could ignore. In Britain, I Ran was only a modest chart hit. In America, it became huge. MTV helped turn the band into one of the most recognizable British new wave acts of the second British invasion. For many American viewers, A Flock of Seagulls looked and sounded like the future arriving through the television screen. That success was deserved. I Ran remains a brilliant early 80s single. The problem was what happened afterwards. For much of the wider public, the song and the image became so powerful that they began to stand in for the entire band. A Flock of Seagulls had achieved the kind of visibility most groups dream of, but that visibility would eventually narrow the way they were remembered. The clearest argument against the one-hit wonder label is the music itself. The 1982 debut album was not just a vehicle for I Ran. It was a strong, atmospheric new wave record with a clear identity. Songs such as Telecommunication and Modern Love is Automatic showed a band fascinated by technology, distance and modern life. But beneath the futuristic surface there was also melody, emotion and strong songwriting. Then there is Space Age Love Song, which many fans now regard as the band's finest moment. Where I Ran is urgent and dramatic. Space Age Love Song is open, romantic and beautifully restrained. Paul Reynolds' guitar gives the song its emotional lift, while Mike Score's vocal keeps it understated and human. It is one of those songs that proves how misleading the stereotype can be, because there is nothing throwaway or novelty-like about it. The debut album also included DNA, an instrumental that won a Grammy Award in 1983. That fact alone complicates the popular memory of the band. A group often reduced to a haircut and a video was being recognized for musicianship and composition. Their second album, Listen, made the case even stronger. Wishing If I Had a Photograph of You became their biggest hit in Britain, charting higher there than I Ran. It was smoother, more reflective and more emotional, showing that the band could develop rather than simply repeat their breakthrough formula. Songs such as Nightmares and Transfer Affection continued that more atmospheric side of their work. By this point, the idea of A Flock of Seagulls as a band with only one worthwhile song becomes very difficult to defend. They had several memorable singles, successful albums, a distinctive sound and a guitarist whose style gave their records a character many fans still admire today. The tragedy is not that they lacked good songs. The tragedy is that the public image became easier to remember than the catalogue. So the question is, were they really a one-hit wonder? If the phrase simply means a band that many casual listeners associate with one song, then perhaps that explains how they are often remembered. But if it means a band whose career can honestly be reduced to one successful record, then the label does not hold up. They had I Ran So Far Away, but they also had space-age love song, Wishing, Telecommunication, The More You Live, The More You Love, and a catalogue that still attracts listeners more than 40 years later. They had chart success on both sides of the Atlantic, a Grammy Award, and a sound that helped define how many people first experienced British New Wave during the early MTV years. Of course, not everything lasted at the same level. By the mid-80s, musical trends were changing, the original lineup began to fracture, and Paul Reynolds' departure changed the chemistry of the band. But that is not the same as being a one-hit wonder. Many respected bands have uneven careers. What matters here is that A Flock of Seagulls left behind far more than one famous song. That is why the story is still worth revisiting. Popular culture often simplifies artists. It chooses the easiest image, the biggest hit, the quickest joke. In this case, it chose I Ran and the haircut. But fans never only heard that version of the band. They heard the atmosphere, the guitar work, the melancholy, the ambition and the songs that lived beyond the stereotype. And the story did not simply end in the 1980s. A Flock of Seagulls have continued to perform for audiences decades later, including a 2026 successful tour across the United States and Canada. People do not keep turning up after 40 years just because of a hairstyle. They come because the song still means something. In the end, A Flock of Seagulls is a perfect example of how mainstream music history can shrink a band into a symbol. But when you listen beyond the symbol, a richer story appears. 4 musicians from Liverpool who created a distinctive early 80s sound and left behind a catalogue that deserves to be remembered for far more than one song. Because beyond I Ran, there was always much more to hear.